Welcome to the Animation Industry Podcast. My name is Nicole. I am a friend of Terry's. I am a voiceover artist. I am a Sagittarius, for anyone who's wondering. And I am doing the intro to today's episode. I hope everybody's having a marvelous day today. I'm having a pretty good day myself. I went on a walk this morning and I found this really cute rock that I've taken home. I'm looking at it right now. I'm holding it in my hands. It kind of looks like salmon, which is sort of weird, but it does. Like, it's pink and it's got all these lines in it. Like, you know how salmon's kind of liney? It's sort of liney, like salmon. Shout out to the rock community. I know you're out there. Some of you may or may not be listening. I see you. I think you're really cool. And I don't know, rocks are so cool. I just really, really, really like rocks. Maybe that's just me, but that's how I feel. This episode has nothing to do with rocks, pink or otherwise. This episode includes a chat with the super amazing 2D animator and storyboard artist, Grahaeme Cowie, who is most recently known for his short film, Everything is Going to Be Okay. Grahame's skills have been sought after by animation powerhouses like WildBrain and Titmouse, and in this chat, he shares how he worked his way up to animation supervisor and the reason he threw all of that away in his 30s to start from scratch as a storyboard artist. How cool. We love taking a risk and having it pay off. Good for you, Grahaeme Cowie. You seem like a really neat guy. Also, this episode is sponsored by that neighborhood cat that didn't seem to belong to any particular house. You know, like the one where it went to each house and it got fed by everybody and it was clean and it had a collar so you knew it belonged somewhere, but everyone was like, where do you live? You know that? Did you ever have that in your neighborhood? I definitely did. I loved her. I thought she was very cute. But I never knew where she lived. Like, she would come in my backyard and I'd give her tuna and I'd be like, hi. I'd give her a name. You know, I don't know her name. I don't know who she is. But for sure she was sleeping in someone's house at night. It wasn't mine. Anyway, she was really neat. And this episode's podcast is brought to you by her. Because I guess she's found some independent wealth and has decided to sponsor this episode. So thank you, Neighborhood Cat. We love you. Enjoy the episode. I know myself and the Neighborhood Cat will be listening to it together. I hope everybody has a great rest of their day. Goodbye.
Hey, Grahaeme. Thanks for coming on the chat. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Terry.
Good. Yeah, of course. If I don't know if anybody was actually who's listening to this was actually attending the Cardiff Animation Festival, but I first grilled you in the animator chat after seeing your short film, Everything's Gonna Be Okay, which is really cool. Congratulations about finishing that up and having it run the festival circuit and everything. How do you feel?
Really excited. It was a great experience. Cardiff, our chat was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that. But getting out to Cardiff was my first in-person animation networking experience since my wife and I moved to Britain, and it was like my first big animation festival experience where I got to watch something screen. So it was a lot of different facets. It was great. It was a lot of fun.
Amazing. Yeah. I actually want to start with a different topic. I'll get into all your short films soon. But okay, you told me before this chat that you actually, about 6 years ago, decided that you were super weak in storyboarding. And so you decided to switch careers into that. Doesn't that seem like a super risky move when you to start trying to make money at the thing you're weakest at? Like, what was your thinking to do this?
So when I went to animation school, it was to be an animated filmmaker. My feeling has always been that everything is going to be okay. This like longer short that I'm working on right now, it's always been about the craft of making art. And so when my business partner and I pitched this TV show and we were working on things, my design's pretty good, my animation's good, my art direction's okay. But I found really like when I was working on the pitch that I was really lost using the camera, like shot progression, when to cut, compositions. And I didn't shore up the pipeline well. Like I wasn't planning. Grahaeme, the storyboard artist, wasn't planning well for Grahaeme, the layout artist, who was then handing things off to Grahaeme, the animator. So Grahaeme, the animator, was like swearing at Grahaeme, the layout artist, and he was playing. So the choice was, because I've always wanted to be a filmmaker, I chose storyboards because I was like, that's that's what I got to level up at. If I want to be who I'm going to be, then I have to tackle that. And, you know, the career choice and the money making stuff, that was an awful experience. No, I mean, everybody I worked with was fantastic and like where I went, but going from being an exceptionally good animator and like an animation supervisor and like directing the short to being at the bottom again was humbling, and it was hard. Like just going from like, oh, I'm very good at this thing that I'm doing to I'm exceptionally not competent.
So you had already been an animator for years, worked your way up to animation supervisor.
Yeah.
At a studio. So how long were you in animation for then? Before
at that point, I'd been in about 5 years, probably 5 and change.
Gotcha.
I moved around the country, and I'd been an animation supervisor out at Copernicus in Halifax. And then while I was working on the TV pitch, I was a character animator.
So what were you doing before animator?
Like before I was
because I also know you went back to school when you were like 31 for animation. Yeah. So was this at 31 that you started that 5-year journey into animation, became it? Okay. Yes. So you had a previous career already. Yeah. You're in your 30s and you decide, listen, Grahaeme, let's risk it all.
Yeah.
We're going to get into animation. I did the same thing when I was 30, actually.
Nice. I love it. That's amazing.
And then 5 years into that, you're like, listen, Grahaeme, let's risk it all again. And even though I have all this experience in animation and worked my way up, I'm a supervisor, which is like, you know, a good position. It's hard to get there. You decided to scrap that and start over with storyboarding.
Yes. Yeah. I know it's even when you say it that way.
But like, okay, so, but you're making your bread and butter this way, you know, like you have commitments, you have, you know, how are you pushing down those fears and all the sacrifices and all the things that you have to commit to start over twice?
Yeah, I guess it's always been about the long-term investment, like who I want to be. So before I got into animation, I did like a fine arts degree when I was in my right out of high school. I did like a fine arts degree, and I was a painter for a few years, and then I tried to write for a bit, and I traveled a whole bunch. But it was always about trying to figure out, like, my path has always been trying to figure out like who is the artist I want to be, or like I'm supposed to be, or like in maximizing my potential. And so the choice to go into storyboards is like, I know I need to get better at this. It's going to sting. It's going to hurt. I'm probably going to embarrass myself. My weeks are going to get longer. You know, it's basically like coming out of school again. You know, those long days of redoing I found when I started animation, there were so many iterations that I had to do to figure out what I wanted. Whereas when I was finishing up being an animator at Titmouse or being a supervisor, I could get what I wanted really, really quickly. Like I could get to the product or the version of what I was trying to say or do really fast. And so going into storyboards, I was at that step one. I had like no library of shots. I had like no idea of shot progression, like what comes after a cut, like what's the best way to like break up an action sequence. So it was.
Did you, for me, when I made my switch, you know, I had a lot of certain securities with like job and income and like where I was living and relationship and everything that allowed me to take this big risk to jump into a different career path. Did you experience that as well, where you're like, this is more of a calculated thing where I've got my life set up? If I fail, I'll have something to rely on? Or is this more of like kind of what you said, this internal trying to get out the inner filmmaker in Grahaeme to put out in the world and just do whatever it takes to get that done?
Yeah, I mean, I could have gone back to the life. So when I left fine arts, I went to Europe. I like backpacked for a bunch, and then like I lived with family in Aberdeen, and I just kind of bartended and bummed around. And my great uncle had a basement, like a cellar that I turned into a painting studio, and so I would paint that down there. And then when I came back to Canada, I painted for a while, but like I wasn't making money. Like I wasn't able to bridge the gap between like art creation and like making money off of it. And so I started doing different odd jobs. I worked in a machine shop. I worked in a warehouse for a while, and then I got into the oil patch, and I worked in the oil industry for just over 2 years and worked my way up to a point where when I left, the company that I was working for offered me like a supervisor's role in like Grand Prairie. They were like, would you like to be the guy to like move up to Grand Prairie?
Would you like to be in charge of oil here?
I was like, the money sounds great. So hypothetically, I could have gone back to that career if I went through animation, like if I did the schooling and then like I tried it and it didn't work out, then I could have always gone back for that. But the middle gap where I knew I wasn't going to do that is between working in the oil patch and going to animation school. Yeah. I lived in Japan for 2 years. I did the JET program. I was teaching English in a city called Fukuyama.
Are you 100 years old? That's what I'm wondering, because you have so many experiences from like all over the world in different careers.
I am the best 100. I'm the best looking 100-year-old man.
Yeah, I'll say.
So when I was in Japan, I started a film festival with some friends, just as like a way of bridging the gap between like the friends we had in the Japanese community and the expats that were living there, some creative expression. And so the second year that we did the film festival, I made an animated short. And I feel like everybody I've talked to who is in animation and it's sort of stuck and they do it has this moment where they make their first character move, and there's like this sense of intoxication, this connection with the medium where they're just like, okay, this is it. And so I did this line test of this character like jumping off screen, and I was like, yeah, this is it. I figured it out. So
wow. So you didn't know, for like a lot of people know from a young age, they were watching like cartoons, whatever, and they're like, oh, this is what I want to be, doodling throughout high school, etc., then go to animation school. You kind of just did it as a creative outlet and discovered it, and a light bulb went off. It's kind of
so that's funny because I drew pathologically, like every other person who tells their animation story. I drew cartoons. All of my sketchbooks from the ages of like 5 to 13 are like cartoon characters of Spider-Man. When I was in grade 7, so I would have been 11 years old, maybe 12, I started a comic book company, Safari Comics, and I used to make comic books and sell subscriptions and like put them in little like saran wrap bags. And like I so badly wanted to be a comic book artist, but I just didn't have anybody around me who knew how to bridge the gap between this guy's drawing a lot of superhero ducks and like making money. And my parents were supportive of going into the arts, but my dad's a chemistry professor and my mom's a nurse. They have friends that they introduced me to, but the instructors that I had were like, comic books aren't real, animation's not real.
Yeah.
Like if you want to be a serious artist, you have to draw non-objective abstract paintings like Rothko, or like you have to study Clem Greenberg,
right?
Yeah. So I wanted, when I was a little kid, like the first thing I wanted to do was draw comic books, and it took from whenever the teacher I had in high school to like that moment in Japan where I went on this like serpentine journey to be like, okay, I guess I'll take this other road. Finding like that same germ from years and years before, that sort of set me off into animation.
Yeah, wow. Isn't that, as you're just talking about your experience in school, I feel like it's so important to just have encouragement or like people in the industry who know how things work, because it's such a, like, for me, it felt like such an exclusive, magical, far away thing to get into animation that I just didn't even know where to start when I was in high school and whatever. It never even crossed my mind that it could be a career path, because I was just like, oh, Hollywood is this place that exists in dreamland, and then somehow I'm sitting in a theater. But like, I guess looking back, would there be anything that you could have given your younger self to like propel yourself into this more? If somebody's like, I guess I'm just thinking, if somebody's listening right now and they're looking for inspiration and they don't know, because a lot of people actually listen to this to figure out how things are done. So like, where would you start yourself?
That's such a tough question. I don't think I would change anything. The road I went down was the road I had to take. And that's like the road that I took, and that's who I am. And the old time travel, move one chair, and like everything gets thrown out of kilter. So
you get back into oil.
I think the most important thing is just being honest with what you want to do and talking to people. When I told my parents I wanted to go into art, they were really apprehensive. And so as like a Christmas present, I painted them like 6 or 7 huge canvases. And I can remember my parents kind of unwrapping them and being like, yeah, okay, you're obviously serious about this. So yeah, we'll talk about how we can help you make a living. And so my dad like made connections with like graphic designers at the time that he knew. And it's just where I grew up and like the people that we knew in the environment. There wasn't exposure to animation. You know, I grew up in Edmonton in like the late 80s. So it was not a lot of it. Even now in Edmonton, there's not a lot of animation. But I've been teaching for years, and every opportunity that I get, like when people's parents come in, I make a point of being like, this is real. Like this is a real career. Like, you know, this is what your child's trajectory could look like. Here's how they can make it. Here's the options for them. And when kids have these moments like I did, I'm like, tell your parents to call me. You know, like I will sit down and talk with them. For people who are looking to do this and don't know how to cross that threshold, it's just like talk to people. And I know the curse of networking, saying networking. It's so hard to just, you know, cold call somebody on Instagram and be like, I love your work, can we talk? But just like be honest with people and yourself, and just like find as many resources.
Totally.
It's so hard. It's so tough to broad brush, like how can you help? I think just talking about what you want to do and being honest with what you want to do and not being afraid to tell somebody. You know, for me, my parents were not necessarily on board until like I anteed up, and then they were like, yeah, okay.
It's so funny that you say, well, I appreciate that you say be honest with yourself. Like I had a huge struggle with that all throughout my life, just trying to, like, I never said I was an animator. I never said I was really into art, and people would be like, oh, you should get into this. And I'd be like, no, I'm no good. And then internally I had like this burning desire that was just like, I felt like I had built so many walls around it just to protect it from, I don't even know what, just myself and judgment and other people. And like, just the fear of failing that I never, it took me until I was 30 to really be honest with myself. And then, you know, say that I want to get into animation. And then people were like, great, we know this about you. You should have done this a long time ago. I was like, what?
I agree. Like what you're saying feels really familiar. I feel like I had the same experience for a long time. And there was also like this sense of like who I am and where I am and like age and like what's too old, what's too young. And, you know, I can remember saying to myself when I was like 25, 26, be like, I get too old to go back to school, which now when I look at it, you know, I'm 45 years old and it's like, that is lunacy. Like that is like a mad thing to say to yourself at 25. But I just had this voice where I was constantly like, no, you can't do this. You've got to focus on this. Like, you know, pragmatic voices where I was like, you've made the choice to go to the oil patch. You've got to like follow this through. So it's really important that, like what you just said, that you recognize what you really want to do and taking the risks to do it.
I don't think those voices ever go away. I still feel them all the time when I'm applying to something new or like just putting myself out there. It's like, oh, you're not good enough or whatnot. But like, you went back to school when you were 31. I went back to school when I was 30, and those, you know, I had such a fear that I'm almost twice the age of like, not almost twice, but like, you know, your classmates are 19 years old and they're super talented. And you're like, what am I doing?
I know exactly what you mean.
And I go on the subreddits all the time on Reddit for like animation, and people are like, I'm 23, I'm too old to go back. And I'm like, no, you're not. In fact, I think having that age difference is almost an advantage, because at least for me, coming through a career already, you know, I'm not afraid to talk to my profs and pick their brains and, you know, become friends with them and network them and seek out opportunities from them. I'm like, I have my schedule and like work ethic nailed down. So I'm not, you know, slacking off and I probably would have failed animation school if I had went when I was 19, because I wouldn't have taken it seriously enough to when I was 30, when I was like, everything is riding on this. I better be super successful. So, you know, how did you experience 31 in animation school all over again?
I feel like you just described my animation school experience. I met some amazing, talented people when I got to school, but I felt really out of place. Like the age difference, which I don't think I'd ever really reflected on before, like just really hit me in the face. There were a couple of people in my class that were 18, 19 out of high school, and the maturity gap, like the sense, I mean, not to say that they weren't mature people, it's just that I was just at a different place, you know, and I'm 100% with you. Like when I did university, right out of high school, I had to drop out. I took a break between year 2 and year 3 because I wasn't going to class. I wasn't focusing. Like I was just enjoying being like a 19-year-old. And when I went back to school this time, I was just like, I want something and I'm going after it. And I just like every day I was just like, I was working.
Yeah.
Like it was a job. I was
just, you treat it like a job, like a career, like a 9-to-5 type of thing. Yeah, totally.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was the same thing. Can I ask what your career was before animation?
I was in marketing.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That ties in quite a bit more than my.
You know, have a podcast, might be marketing. So let me ask you this. How do you feel now that, you know, going through all this experience and being honest with who you are, and then, you know, getting into animation, deciding that wasn't the sweet spot for you, and then starting over in storyboarding just so you could pick up this skill to be a better filmmaker? How do you feel now? Good.
I feel like I've in storyboards, I feel like I've found my feet, and between my experience in animation and storyboards, I feel like I can very comfortably put films together. And, you know, with my history in fine arts, I feel confident painting, and like I feel like my art direction is fairly competent. So I feel more close to the whole package. You know, here's some good advice for up and coming animators. I feel more like I am projecting the version of, or the artist that I am, that I can see inside, that maybe it took a long time for other people to see. That's a little convoluted. I feel like when I started out, when I was rough in my skills, I knew I could be this artist that I'm turning into now, but I didn't have like the pencil miles or like the experience, the iterations to like really know how to bring that out. But now with like the time that I've spent, you know, the last 10, 12 years that I've been in animation, I feel like the experience that I've gained has really brought out the artist that I knew I could always be.
Yeah.
And I can show that to people more clearly. Whereas when I started, I'd be like, no, I can really do this thing. But, you know, my character design was clumsy. My storyboards were lacking information, and like my character animation was clunky, you know, just things that only experience will bring out. And so I think in every artist, in my experience anyway, there's like a version of yourself that you know you are, that you think you are, that maybe hasn't been realized yet, and it's just through experience and practice.
Totally. It's crazy. I mean, I feel that too. I like the artist inside, I guess. Like there's just this kind of feeling that I have that I can only express by creating something through animation for some reason. I don't know why, but it takes so long to get there. You have to pick up so many skills, et cetera, et cetera. So you're primarily, you know, restarting your career two or three times to get to this state where you feel super fulfilled and satisfied with what you have inside, exporting what you have inside. And that's what's been propelling you. I think that's like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, almost, with like self-actualization at the top.
Really?
Well, you know, where it's like shelter and food on the bottom, and then like health, et cetera. And at the top, it's like, then only once you have those other states filled, you can like reach the inner, whatever you're supposed to be, fulfillment. I was going to ask you, you know, well, now I forgot. I just went on this tangent. But okay, so are you currently making your bread and butter as a storyboard artist?
Yes. Yeah. That's
is that purely because now you're pursuing this to get better at it, or is it because you've just ended up in this path to get better at it instead of, because like why wouldn't you still be an animation supervisor and then become like a storyboard artist on the side as like a hobby?
I feel like the way that I learn is that I need, what's the right way of putting this? I need hands-on experience.
Yeah.
I have a really, really, really hard time getting, like, I think of learning as like this like graph that sort of has like a steep climb and then like plateaus and steps as you go. And I feel like that steep climb for me, I do not excel when I am left to research by myself. I can, but like I need to be immersed. Like if I'm doing it on the side, it takes me a really, really long time. And so I knew that listening to you lay out my career, it also sounds like I might be a masochist. So I wonder if it's just the thrill of being thrown into the new experience.
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
very much the same. Yeah.
Yeah. I think as a learner, like I need to be immersed. Like I can't side focus. Like I really need to be front and center. Like if something is going to take my attention, it's taking like my full attention.
Totally.
And I can get mildly obsessive about things, and I just like glom on to a goal until I've accomplished it. And then like I move on to something else. So
makes sense to me.
Yeah.
So what is the state you're trying to reach then? You know, filmmaker is a thing, but like, does that mean you're going to stay as a storyboard artist making films, or do you like, what does that mean at the end of the day? That's a great
question. That is my dream is that somebody just shows up at my house once a month with a bucket of money, and they're like, just make whatever you want. I love you. You're doing great. And then they leave. And then that's like,
isn't that the dream for all of us? Although yes, I think if somebody did that, I wouldn't make anything. I would just be like, thanks.
Yeah.
I feel like for me, part of what propels me to make is the struggle.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think there's real value in having to like the everything's going to be okay. You know, I had to figure out how to make that by funding it myself and by setting time aside. And you got to pick your battles. And I think when you don't have unlimited money, you don't get into a thief in the cobbler situation where it just like explodes into like multiple iterations of like the best version of the greatest film that's ever made that never gets finished. So I think limitations are super important. But to your question, I am currently at a crossroads because I'm trying to figure out like where to go next, like what to do next and what to be. I think, you know, I love doing the short film. And so my goal short term is to find funding for the horror short that I'm working on. But longer term, I don't know the answer to that right now. And I'm trying to figure that out. I'm researching like arts, career coaches and consultants and like figuring out how to branch into other parts of the industry. But I think in the medium term, I would like to do like some commercials. I would like to work for some of the boutiques in London that do like.
So is there a person or position you can think of that you would want? Like, do you want to work be a creative director at an agency maybe where you work on commercials and short films and all these things? Does that make sense? Or do you want to be like a filmmaker who, you know, has enough repertoire that you get government or outside angel funding to create crazy stuff, which is like, I can't even think of somebody off the top of my head because it's so rare.
I don't know that's, I mean, I feel like that's like the bucket.
You could be the first one. Maybe I'm sure I know there are other people who are like this. I've actually talked to people who, you know, they have day jobs that pay their bills enough for them to just serially create short films over a long, like forever, basically.
Part of the reason going into animation is that like for a long time I did jobs where I was paid fairly well and then I would work on my animated projects on the side. But I started having this like Peter Parker Spider-Man existence. Right? I had to walk around all day and be like, hey everybody, Grahaeme, I'm not gonna use the Spider-Man, but like I would spend all day at work and I'd be like, hi everybody, 8 hours. All right, now I'm going home. And then you would have to put in another 8 hours. And just at a certain point, I was like, I can't do this and like maintain human relationships.
You burn out so fast.
Yeah. Oh, and I mean, that's a whole other part of the industry conversation is like how to deal with burnout. Now that we've talked about this for a second, I think my best case scenario is that I start my own studio and we make shorts and commercials and put money aside to do like creative projects. I was Is that your jam too? Is that your?
I mean, yes, but so like this is a very interesting discussion for me, just thinking internally as we're talking, because this has been on my mind as well. I would love to create shows and shorts indefinitely, but figuring out how to fund it is a different thing. And, you know, I've thought about a lot of different things. One is like, you know, finding investment from, because there's Canadian grants, we have the National Film Board, et cetera, the arts grants. Then there's like, you know, you could do something completely different. I could do my business consulting on the side. I could, get into like something crazy like drop shipping. You hear all these things, but then it's like, and then I've talked to studio owners with this exact, mindset as well. And so far, everybody I've talked to has gotten in the not run around, but it's like, you have to keep the lights on, and to keep the lights on, you got to keep pitching and working. And then eventually you stop becoming the director and you start becoming the producer, and then you start becoming the business sales guy. And then you're completely removed from the process. And then, so I'm also searching for this. And I think it's just got to figure it out, whatever for yourself makes you comfortable, I guess. Cause I think it's the dream that so many people are figuring out, but unfortunately we live in a world that not everybody is like eating animation like they are pizza or something.
I don't know. It's a great question. I don't know the answer to it. But like, that's my mood board right now.
Okay. So you just finished a completely self-funded short film that's doing the festival circuit. It's being pretty successful. It's an amazing watch. I watched it obviously, and I interviewed already. It looks phenomenal. And it left something to be desired as well. You got this backstory that has no explanation, and et cetera. So you're making another short film now, but you said that because this could be the next step, you're finding funding. So where are you starting for, first of all, if you're comfortable sharing, how approximately, what was the budget for your past short film, if you were to make one up?
I mean, it took me 3 months. So I guess if me not getting paid for 3 months is
okay. So we'd all love to be paid six figures or whatever. So what is that? It's $8,000 a month, well, Canadian. So 25, let's say $25,000. Okay.
And that's like, so I hired people to do different jobs. And so like whenever I break down the budget, it's harder in this case because I did so many things myself. Right. And I'm just like, all right, so
you're working, other people are working, because you had a guy make the music, which is it's perfectly phenomenal,
so
et cetera, et cetera. So, okay. So say you're looking, let's just keep it simple. You're looking for $25,000 for your next project. Where are you starting to find this funding? Like, what is the first step in trying to get somebody else to fork out some money for a vision you have?
That is a great question. I'm like stalled at the first step, like just looking at the places that, but
the
like,
hardest step, to be honest.
And like really, I'm just hunting through, like right now, because I live in the UK, I'm looking through like the different websites. And one thing that I find fascinating is that when I was in Canada, and it looks like it's the same in the UK, there is no collected portal for funding. Like there's no search medium for like funding opportunities. Like there's no like funding.ca, and you go to it and you punch in like what project you want, and like there's no assistance to it, so you've got to like put in all that legwork. Right. And so right now I'm just sort of like going through each of the different available links that I can find, and then I look through the requirements. And I was looking at one 3 weeks ago that I think it was in the British Council. I can't remember. I'd be lying out of school to see what it was, but it's some like public grant. And one of the requirements is that you have like 2 short films and like a director's credit to your name.
Oh my goodness. So first of all, be established.
So I'm having a really hard time navigating this myself, because like
totally. You almost need to hire like a consultant or something, who knows. And then you're also competing with everybody. What I've learned is there's like a niche of people who apply to every single grant and fund every single year. Basically, because they know their way around, and then whatever project is, they just tailor their skills and experience to that, and then they get the funding and make the thing, and then they just done, and they're going, which is crazy. So it's like I feel like demotivated to even try to bother to get into this myself.
I agree. So like I feel like I'm at that steep climb of the graph that we were talking about, and I have a 3-pronged attack right now, where I'm looking for a consultant to talk to, but sort of like career-wide, big picture stuff. And then I'm looking for somebody to pay to like write a grant proposal, like just sort of like a template, like you say, that you can, like, if you establish sort of like the pitch, the project bones, then you can shift it with like each application that comes up.
Yeah, totally.
And then at some point, like a production partner, somebody that I can share projects with. But yeah, I feel like I'm right at the start. I'm not my skill set is making the film, and I find with this short, I think I looked into funding for a little bit, and I just hit a point where I was like, I'm just going to make it, and then I'll figure it out afterwards. And I'm terrified that I'm going to do the same on the next film because it's so much longer. But like it's not what I'm good at. It's not my skill set, and I need to level that up. So
maybe this is a little off topic, but it's something I think about all the time too, because like, you know, I put together show pitches and I pitch them around, but there's like a clear ROI, return on investment, when it comes to something like that. Or like a, you know, like a video game, like if you're, you know, making an app or something, you know, you can get advertising revenue or charge for it. But when it comes to short films, you know, there's no clear revenue stream coming back. It's, you know, accolades, networking opportunities. Sometimes the studio will come and be like, we love your short film, we'd love to turn it into something bigger for like Netflix or Amazon or whatever. So like, have you thought about how to give like an ROI to attract people more? Like some people do like Kickstarter where you can get a t-shirt or something in return or whatever.
That's a great question. For the TV pitch that my partner and I did 6 years ago, we did a Kickstarter for it, and like we did a ton of swag, and it worked. But I feel like it was an interesting process, and it's sort of like my plan BC to go back to.
So you animated a trailer for a TV show?
I made like an 8-minute pilot for.
Wow.
So talk about like spending money. I took
a full episode.
Yeah, we pitched it around forever. Everybody said no, and we were convinced that it was going to work, and so we kickstarted the short, and then I used like a ton of my own money just to make it. Hired like 15-20 animators, something like that, and I basically spent 11 months in my apartment making this
oh my
short.
Goodness.
Yeah, it was bananas. Yeah, it was super crazy. But that's like having done that already, knowing how expensive that is and like how long it takes now, how intense it is, I would prefer to find a different model for it. So like I've done the Kickstarter, and it's rewarding, but have you done a?
I've never, no, I'm my opinion is like, who would give me money? I don't understand.
I feel like that was
I don't even bother.
Yeah.
I feel like if I did, I'd expect like $10 from some friends, and that's it. I'd be like, great, why did I do this?
It's so hard. And I feel like I have the same issue with networking and socials, you know, like it's all about breaking outside of your 2 rings of influence, you know, like your mom and your cousins and best friends, you know, like the people who kind of still watch what you're posting, that you went together with, you know, you went to high school with, and then like total strangers, and breaking through that second ring to total strangers is so difficult. And the Kickstarter that we did was like was a full-time job that we split between 2 of us, and it was 30 days of just like every day, just like hustle and like,
my goodness,
it's really intense.
So what happened? What happened with the trailer once it was finished and everything?
So we released that into the world. It got like a lot of good views, and then nobody wanted to make it.
So you went to every studio. They all said no. You're like, screw you guys. It's a great idea. We're going to do this on our own. You did it on your own. You got a hella view count. You went back to the studios and said like, look, now we have social proof that this is actually what people want.
Yeah.
And they still said no.
And we didn't get any traction. So
and then what?
And then we just moved on. And then it exists in the background. It exists in space.
Can I look it up? Is it on YouTube?
Yeah, it's actually linked on my website. If you go through the projects, it's Impotence. I got to warn you, it's extremely crass. It is.
It's extremely crass. That's fine. What's it called?
Crass. Impotence. IMPOTENTS.
Impotence.
Yeah.
Great. I can imagine how that's crass.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So it's about Jesus, Buddha, and Ganesh who live together in
I can see that. That's why I can't see like, you know, Disney Channel picking that up, you know, it's a hard sell. It's more like an Adult Swim.
It was, but like the jokes were a little racy, and then the character material. I mean, basically, when we talk to people, they'd be like, "We can't sell Jesus in the States. We can't sell Buddha in China, and we can't sell Ganesh in India. So you can't make the show." And we're like, "We'll show you." And then we're like, "Yeah, you were right."
So
it was a valuable.
Do you still feel like it could become a big thing if it were given a chance?
I mean, I think there's potential there. I think it's, I think that when my partner and I made it, we were pretty new. Like, it was my first time working on a project like this. So there's a lot of things that I would do differently. And I think I would want to rewrite a lot of the episodes, but I think, I mean, my partner was the writers. I mean, he didn't write episodes, not me. I think it was a good experience. We learned a lot, and I took not getting it made stung at the time, but like the things that I learned from making it were super valuable.
Nice. I do want to talk more about your storyboarding, because you said you were the weakest in it, and now you have a career in it. What were kind of the strengths that you built over these past years in storyboarding that now, when you're applying for something, they're like, "Oh, Grahame's coming on our team. We want him." Like, what are those things that you've picked up?
I think so. What I do when I'm working on each project is I zero in on one skill to improve on. Like when I took my first board job, the first thing I wanted to work on was like my shorthand, just getting a competent gesture drawing as fast as possible, getting to like the fast model drawing as quickly as possible. And then on the next job that I took, I started focusing on shot progression, and then the job after that, I started focusing on
what does shot progression mean?
Like, sort of like what shot comes, like, so you've got like a wide of 4 characters. Do you cut into like a close-up of somebody to go into a 2-shot? If you're in like an action sequence, how do you cut together a montage to get that feeling of?
Is there a rule of thumb that you follow? Like, I've heard, like, far away then up close, then type of thing. Like, you always like come back, because I guess in school they teach you, like close up for emotions. You got your establishing shot, should be a long shot, whatever. But like shot progression between the shots, the only thing that I've heard that I can think of is like basically close fire.
Yeah, the only thing that I like, what I try to do is I think like what does the scene require? Like, so in a short, in a scene, in an act, you're always asking a question and choosing to answer it or not. Like, you're choosing to like answer the question or leave it open, which drives the story forward. Normally, if you answer a question, then like another one comes up. And so like when I'm choosing my shots, I'm presenting information, and then I'm asking myself as the audience, like, what do I need to know next? There's a really good book on directing film. What I have sitting beside me. Doesn't matter. And it talks specifically about what is important to show to the audience, like one in the shot progression. So like if there's like a character walking into a store, start with a wide, and then maybe go on a close-up of the key that doesn't work, and then like a medium shot of the character reacting to why the key doesn't work. And then like a medium wide of somebody walking up with the real key, then they both laugh, and then like a wide again as they both walk in, like patting each other on the back. The one rule that I follow regimentedly is don't yo-yo. Like, so don't pop like wide, close, wide, close, wide, close, because it creates like a strobe effect. But otherwise, I just try to figure out like what the audience needs to see. And then,
I mean, that makes much more sense than just following a formula. Like, if you're always just showing what the information required, then that makes sense. And the way you described it, I just pictured that all in my head. It was great.
Nice. Excellent. Let's get some funding for that.
Let's get some funding. If you're listening and you want to fund, man walks into a grocery store with the wrong key, get in touch with Grahaeme, and he's already got your story covered.
BAFTA, I guarantee a BAFTA.
Yeah. So are you working towards like, you're a storyboard artist right now. Are you working towards like, I don't know, senior, supervisor? director or something like that instead? Because
sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, because like, the filmmaker thing is the ultimate goal, but in the meantime, you got, you got some steps to make, I guess, just in your own career.
Yeah, I think that falls into like the what to do next. I think the pandemic has reorganized my priorities for how I work. I'm still working from home and have only had 2 conversations with studios where they're like, we'd like you to come in. And I've been lukewarm and didn't end up actually taking the jobs where they wanted me in the studio. So I think for myself, moving on to a storyboard supervisor soon would be a high priority, and then directing at some point in the next few years. But again, like it's that same crossroads. Like I feel like coming out of the pandemic, I'm just sort of like getting my footing again. In terms of like talking to people and adapting and like interacting and things like that. I think I really need to focus on what I want and need to do next, and figuring out like what's the best road to take to realize the goals that I have.
Totally.
Because I've done things based on like what I think I need, but maybe having like an outside perspective on how to achieve those goals and roads to take that I don't maybe necessarily see or know about, I think could be valuable.
Yeah, I guess just wrapping up the storyboard thread, what would take you to storyboard supervisor for somebody to say, like, we want Grahaeme in this role, versus if they had the choice of everybody else in the world? Like, what is it that makes somebody a successful, sought after storyboard supervisor specifically?
The storyboard supervisors that I love working with are clear communicators and great collaborators.
You didn't even say anything about storyboarding.
No, yeah. I don't know if it's ever come up in a meeting with a storyboard supervisor that they've like shown me how to storyboard. It's really just about like how to communicate with somebody, like how to empower the people on your team to be the best version of themselves to fit into the project. One of the things that I've liked best about running my own projects and when I was supervising an animation is figuring out which person goes in what role, and then empowering each of the people in those positions to do what they want, but like to examine, to elaborate, to investigate how they can creatively express themselves in that role. I mean, obviously in a production, you can't just go off the deep end, but like finding the right role for the right person and working with somebody who is a good communicator and a good collaborator makes all of that easier. So
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, like letting people run in their respective roles as they know best.
Yeah,
not taking the weakest ones and putting them in the trying to make a joke from how you looked at yourself as weak at storyboarding and put yourself in that specifically.
Yeah, I definitely had some, I remember a meeting I was having with a director, the storyboard supervisor, my first job, and I'd been jumping the axis throughout this whole episode. And I was like, I am not jumping the axis. And the storyboard supervisor really frustratedly turned around and put his hand on my shoulder. And he was like, you're the only person in this room that thinks that. I was like, good.
Oh no. Oh no.
but it was just that, like, I just, at the time I couldn't see the mistakes.
Yeah.
But the supervisors that the directors that I like working with explain what they want. And then, you have a clear, open communication. You have a launch meeting where you talk about what the episode or the show needs to be. And then they go through the things that they want. And then when you deliver and you add things to the show, or like you pitch an idea or a joke or like a setup, if you're working with somebody who's really good at their job, the best scenario wins, the best joke wins, the best idea wins. It's not about who's right. It's about like finding a collaborative environment to work in. And conversely, I've been in environments where I've worked with people who need to be right, and it's a poison train fire. Like it's awful.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Conversely, when you're a storyboard artist or just in your role in general, how much are you communicating up versus, I'm just going to finish this whole scene to my best ability and show them at the end versus I'm going to show them periodically throughout to see how it's going.
I prefer to touch base. I don't like, I've worked with people before who kind of go off into their corner and work on everything and then show up at the end and they're like, I did the best thing ever. And then everybody's like, oh no, there's so many mistakes here. So
and then they're like back to the drawing board and their ego is cut.
I prefer to communicate as much as possible. I'll like, as I work on like if I have a staging idea or if I have like an acting beat, I'll send it off to the board supervisor, the director, whoever, like whatever the relationship is. Most often I just coordinate directly with the storyboard supervisor, and then we'll do calls. I mean, just like this, we'll just jump on the Zoom or whatever we're using and talk about something that needs to be broken down. But I mean, to me, communication is critical. Like you have to talk. It's so dangerous to go off into a silo or a corner and try to work on something by yourself, because it's, we all have instincts. We all have ideas for how we want it to be, but on a project that isn't your own, it's always about realizing somebody else's vision, whether that's Mattel or Netflix or, Joe Friendly, like that's not a real person, but like whatever project you're working on, it's important that like you give the person you're working for the project that they want.
Makes sense. Maybe as like my last wrapping up question, it sounds like you have a lot of experience in a multitude of areas when it comes to, animation, filmmaking, storyboarding, art direction, et cetera, even just the pipeline itself. What's stopping you from just jumping up and saying like applying to director roles or, roles where you would be put into the sweet spot of what you're trying to get to? Like, why are you keeping yourself to storyboarding to work your way up? Is it because you don't feel good enough at storyboarding yet and you feel like you have more to learn there? Because you could also just jump into a directing role and kind of learn intuitively from the experts who are in those respective silos of the pipeline. So what's stopping you from kind of taking a jump?
I think the answer is twofold. There's a two-pronged answer to this. One, I would like to call back to your imposter syndrome comment earlier. I have been and always have been crippled by the voice that says that I shouldn't be somewhere. Like I'm still waiting for somebody to just come up and be like, hey man, we didn't realize you were here. We're going to need you.
Isn't it crazy how your internal voice needs external reassurance from a stranger to go away? Like, why does that make sense?
It's so toxic. I hate it so much. And so like a lot of my creative life has just been about silencing that feeling about myself.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of times I'm just like, oh, just wait till you're perfect. Oh, just wait till you get all the parts of storyboarding down and then you'll be allowed to move to the next. But I also think that because I started so, I don't know if weak is the right word. Like I feel like even though I was weakest at storyboarding than other things, I was still, mildly competent when I got started. It was just in relative terms, like where I was in animation at that point in my career. I feel like that there was just very often, like when I feel like I know animation in my bones. Like when I got out of school, I very quickly glommed onto it. Like I just, like my first job, I was like, I get this. And like, I got really good at it really fast. And I can just sense movement. And I actually did a short stop motion contract for 4 months in Saskatoon. And it was amazing because like when you move a body physically, like the body moves, it's even more intuitive. And like, you can just like the motion and like, and the instinct and the subtleties of the body. And anyway, I can feel animation really intuitively. And I feel like I've had to teach myself those skills or learn those skills in storyboards. And so like, I feel only recently I've leveled up to the point where I feel like I was in animation a few years ago. So between like a level of comfort and the voice in the back of my head telling me to quit everything and go hide in the mountains, I think.
So I guess to reiterate back to you, like when you feel level of comfortability, like you've gone over the hedge of a learning curve with whatever you're pursuing, then it's like more of an emotional thing where it's like, now it's time for the next thing rather than like a logical thing saying like, I want to end up here. then I should just, do things that would get me to, if it's director, I would do things that get me to director. Like, because from my point of view, storyboarding is really tough to get into. Everybody wants to get into storyboarding. There's so few jobs. So most people end up just like 2D rigging or something.
Yeah.
So you already penetrated that. And you've been doing it at a number of studios. You've got some great work behind you. You've worked on some really cool projects, and you're ready to become storyboard supervisor. Plus you have this whole animation background. You're a successful filmmaker. You've got the art direction. You've got the painting. Like, you're the whole package. So, like, you already have all this experience from my perspective. So like, there's nothing, I don't have that little voice inside of me for you. So for me, it makes logical sense for you to just pursue those opportunities right now, I guess.
Done. Okay. In that case, I will.
Done. Yeah.
All I needed was to come on here and talk to you for an hour, and it solved all my problems.
I'm expecting next week for you to be like, hey, listen, I became director of the world. And I have you to thank, Terry.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I recognize.
No, but I also feel the exact same way, because like, it's I feel like animation is a very emotional career experience. Like, nobody's doing this because they're like, I don't know, it's not like a factory job or like a 9 to 5 or something where you can just go and do the work and come back and it's expected of you. I mean, you can, but who would do that in animation? Like, oh yeah, I didn't know what to pick in school. So I just like did animation, and then I ended up directing. And then like, that seems crazy to me. So, art is always an emotional and like internal and very tied to the ego thing. So it makes sense.
I guess I've always made choices where I try to fulfill the artist that I think I'm supposed to be. And it served me pretty well so far. And I'm just trying to figure out how to take the next steps. But
totally,
what we're talking about is exactly where I want to go. It's about figuring out how to do it. And
well, as long as like, for me is like, I have goals of like being director of the world too, but the real goal is just to be happy and feel fulfilled. And as long as that is being experienced, I don't really care what I'm doing, like
I agree with you. Yeah. That's my highest priority, is just to be content and just to make sure that I'm realizing the artist that I want to be.
Wow. I feel like this has been a very raw and kind of inspirational chat to hear you, go through all of these crazy experiences all over the world, and then end up here and realize like, what the true Grahaeme is underneath, and to pursue that. I think that's quite incredible, actually.
Well, thanks. I really enjoyed this conversation.
As we're wrapping up, is there anything you wanted to share that, somebody who's listening to this and they've heard your story and they've seen your work, is there anything you think would be interesting for them to know from your experience or whatnot?
Oh, wow.
Or anything you'd like to share in general, period?
I'm looking forward to sharing my short film. Everything is going to be okay with everyone. Once I get word at the end of the year on which festivals it is or isn't going to be included in, I'm excited to share it online and hearing some feedback from all of your listeners. Yeah,
well, I'm excited for everybody to see that as well. I think it's going to get some really good attention.
Thanks.
Cool. Well, Grahaeme, thank you so much for coming on the chat. It's been an absolute pleasure.
I really enjoyed it. Thanks, Terry. This is great.
Of course. Yeah. And if you're listening and you want to, get in touch with or follow Grahame's work or anticipate his short film coming out, you can do so by following him on Instagram under @Grahaeme, because he was the first Grahaeme to get that handle, or his website, which is grahamecowie.com. And I'll include the link to both of those in the description of this chat. And that's all for now. Thank you so much for listening. Okay, bye. The music for this podcast was composed by Will Farmer and the graphics by Daniel Abensauer. I encourage you to look them up if you enjoyed their work.